cleaners for wasting too much of time. He complains that he doesn't get satisfied after washing his hands for one time. Okay, although he knows that this is completely irrational. Okay, that means it is of no logic. There is no reason behind it. Okay, but he can't control his thoughts. It gives him anxiety and depressive mood. Which of the following is wrong about his condition? First of all, as we always do, what is your provisional diagnosis? Very good. So the provisional diagnosis over here is definitely OCD. OCD is nothing but obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, in obsessive compulsive disorder, there are two parts to it, right? One are definitely called as obsessions and the other one are called as compulsions. So what are these obsessions, anybody? So these obsessions are repetitive, recurrent, irrational thoughts. They have no meaning behind it, but these are just repetitive and recurrent thought that comes to a patient's mind. बार बार एक constant thought आता रहेगा patient के दिमाग में कि तुम्हारे हाथ गंदे हैं, तुम्हारे हाथ गंदे हैं, तुम्हारे हाथ गंदे हैं. Okay, so that constant, irrational, recurrent thought that comes to a patient's mind, that is what is called as an obsession. Now, as this constant thought is coming to your mind, for example, if you're constantly getting irritated with that thought कि तुम्हारे हाथ गंदे हैं, तुम्हारे हाथ गंदे हैं, तो क्या होगा उसकी वजह से? So that will lead to anxiety, right? That will lead to anxiety in you. So to overcome that anxiety, to avoid that anxiety, what you will try to do? You will try to go and wash your hands. So to overcome the obsessions, the motor acts that we do, these are called as compulsions. Okay? So obsessions are nothing but repetitive, recurrent thoughts which are irrational in nature. First thing. What are compulsions? These are motor acts which we have to do to overcome the obsessions or to overcome that recurrent thoughts. Otherwise, if you don't do the compulsions, what will happen? It will land us up in anxiety and the depressed mood. Okay? So that is what is an obsessive compulsive disorder. If I ask you which is the most common type of OCD, anybody? That has been described in your question itself. So the most common type of disorder is obsessions of contamination. कि तुम्हारे हाथ गंदे हैं. Obsessions of contamination. With compulsions of hand washing. With compulsions of hand washing. Okay, these are the most common type of OCD I am saying. Again, I am repeating these. This is the most common type of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. But if they ask you individually, which are the most common obsessions? So the most common obsessions will remain the same. Okay, the most common obsessions will remain the same. Thoughts yahi aate rahenge. Most common obsessions are definitely these obsessions of contamination. But if they ask you what are the most common type of compulsions? What are the most common type of compulsions? So usually these compulsions are repetitive checking. क्या होता है? तुमने फॉर एग्जाम्पल गीजर का बटन बंद किया या नहीं, गाड़ी का दरवाजा ढंग से बंद किया या नहीं, रात को सोते समय दरवाजा बंद किया या नहीं, ये बार बार पैथोलॉजिकल डाउट आता रहता है. And to overcome that pathological doubt, the motor actions that you do is repetitive checking. ठीक है? So pathological doubt with repetitive checking is the second most common type of OCD. But if I talk about obsessions and compulsions individually, so obsessions most common are obsessions of contamination, but the most common type of compulsions are compulsions of checking. Okay? So that's important about your obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, let's see, once you have made this diagnosis of OCD, option A says it is ego dystonic. What do I mean by ego dystonic? So psychiatric disorders can be either ego dystonic or they can be ego syntonic. Ego syntonic means they are agreeable to self. ठीक है? That means जो भी तुम कर रहे हो उसमें तुम्हें कोई दिक्कत नहीं नजर आ रही. Whatever you are doing, you are not finding any fault in it. Okay, it is agreeable to self. That is what is called as ego syntonic disorder. Here, does the patient feels that whatever he is doing is absolutely normal? No, he does not feel that whatever he is doing is absolutely normal, because they have mentioned that he gets a feeling that it is completely irrational. If this disorder was ego syntonic, what thought he should have got? He should have got a thought that whatever I am doing is completely rational. Whatever I am doing is completely and absolutely fine. But he is getting a thought that it is completely irrational. That means whatever I am doing has no logic or no reason behind it. Okay? That means it is not ego syntonic in nature. OCDs are ego dystonic in nature. That means not agreeable to self. you will not agree. Whatever you are doing, you will not agree to that. तुम हाथ तो धो रहे हो, but तुम्हें पता है कि हाथ धोने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. That means you're not agreeing to it. Okay, so please remember what is ego dystonic. Ego dystonic means not agreeable to self. It is not agreeable to self. Okay, so definitely OCDs, we know they are ego dystonic in nature. Option B says judgment power of the patient is normal. Yes, definitely. Judgment power कैसे test करते हो? That is called a judgment testing. How you will do that? So you will ask patient a question. For example, अगर तुम्हारे सामने शेर आ जाता है तो तुम क्या करोगे? If a tiger comes in front of you, what you will do? So you are trying to test his judgment, right? So if the patient says, I'll try to run away, I'll try to hide, that means his judgment is normal. But if the patient says, मैं जाके उससे लड़ जाऊंगा, ठीक है, उससे दो दो हाथ कर लूंगा, okay, if the patient says, I'll try to fight with him, definitely his judgment ability or this judgment power is affected. But in the case of OCD, there's no other issue. Apart from these obsessions and the compulsion, the patient is absolutely normal. The patient is absolutely normal. The working, everything of that patient is normal. उसकी जिंदगी में जो भी खराबी हो रही है वो एक ही चीज की वजह से हो रही है, and that is what is his constant thoughts that he is getting. ठीक है? So definitely the judgment power of this person is absolutely normal. No issues with that. Option C says insight is present. Now I hope what is insight, all of you are quite aware of it. Insight क्या होता है? Awareness of an illness. That means, for example, if a patient is suffering from diabetes, he knows that he is suffering from diabetes. Or, for example, a patient who is suffering from, for example, like some organic mental disorder, which are called as neurotic disorders. The patient knows कि okay, I am having some neurotic disorder. ठीक है, that means insight is present. But if I talk about psychotic disorders या psychiatric disorders, what happens is the patient accepting कि मैं पागल हूँ. बोलता है क्या कोई? नहीं बोलता है ना. So please remember, in psychotic or psychiatric disorders, the patient does not accept that he is having a disease. That means he is unaware of his own illness. And awareness of own illness is what is called as insight. Okay? So now here, definitely OCD, is it a psychiatric or a neurotic disorder? So if I talk about psychotic disorders and neurotic disorders, okay, psychotic or neurotic disorders, the basic difference between both of them, I told you, insight is nothing but awareness of illness, right? So awareness of illness is present in which one? Awareness of illness is present in the neurotic disorders, but awareness of illness is absent in the psychotic disorders. That's absolutely fine with everyone. So please remember, OCD or any type of anxiety disorder. OCD is also included in the group of anxiety disorders because it is also leading to anxiety in the patient, right? So it is also anxiety disorder itself. Now, anxiety disorders or OCD is definitely a neurotic disorder. It is a neurotic disorder. That means insight will be present. Patient को पता है कि that he is suffering from some disease, and that is the reason why he'll go to the hospital, he'll talk to the doctor, and he'll try to get treatment for it. ठीक है? But a patient of schizophrenia, on other hand, he is not aware that he is suffering from some illness. Therefore, he'll not go to the hospital, he'll not take some treatment. That's the basic idea. So definitely in an OCD, the patient is completely aware of his illness. So what is not present? Definitely. So option D is your answer. That means they are saying reality testing is absent. In a case of OCD, reality testing is present rather. What is reality testing? To be aware of your surroundings, to be aware of your reality. मेरे आसपास जो भी कुछ हो रहा है, मुझे वो चीजें पता है. That is what is reality testing. ठीक है? That's the most important fact. For example, reality testing is absent. इसका मतलब क्या हो जाता है? That the patient is unaware of his reality or of his surroundings. That means the patient is living in his own dream world. अपने अलग fantasy या dream world में रहता है patient. That is when we say that the reality testing of the patient is absent. But here, is the patient living in his own dream world? अपने ख्वाबों में, अपने dream में जिंदा है क्या वो? नहीं जिंदा. उसको पता है अपने आसपास क्या चीजें चल रही है. He is aware of the reality in his surroundings. That means reality testing in a case of OCD is absolutely intact. It is present. कोई दिक्कत नहीं है इसमें अभी. So that's the important funda. ठीक है? Now if I talk about OCD, what is done in cases of OCD? Treatment के लिए. So what is the best behavioral therapy? Please remember, cognitive behavioral therapy जो होती है ना, that is usually given for psychiatric disorders. For neurotic disorders, we prefer giving behavioral therapy only. ठीक है? And in behavioral therapy or in BTs, if I talk about which is the best psychotherapy or which is the best behavioral therapy for OCD, if they ask you, what is that best behavioral therapy for OCD? Best psychotherapy for OCD? That was the question.
Exposure.
Very good. Best psychotherapy for OCD is definitely ERP. What do I mean by ERP? Exposure and response prevention. What do I mean by exposure and response prevention? So here you will take the patient. He's having obsessions of contamination and compulsions of hand washing. That is an example. Now here you will take this patient. Okay. You will make his hands dirty. You will dip his hands in mud. You will dip his hands in soil. That is what is exposure. Now, what will happen? Due to this, he'll get that constant obsessions and the constant anxiety. But are you allowing to go him to wash his hands? No, you will not allow him to go and wash his hands. Okay? That means you're preventing the response. That is what is exposure and response prevention. You will take the patient, you will expose him, okay, to the contamination, and then you will prevent the response. That means you will prevent him for going and washing his hands. So definitely in the first go, the patient will have a lot of anxiety that would be unbearable for him. But in the subsequent settings, what will happen? धीरे धीरे करके क्या हो जाएगा? The patient will definitely have lesser anxiety. ठीक है? So please remember, every time you need to do this, exposure and response prevention. कोई भी psychotherapy एक setting में नहीं करी जाती. There are multiple settings which are required for any psychotherapy or any psychiatric treatment for that matter. Please remember, it is not a magical thing. That will not anytime occur in psychiatry. Don't believe that. Treatment will go on for years and years together. ठीक है? So psychiatry is not a magical branch. ठीक है? That's important. तुम्हें अगर लगेगा कि इससे immediately हो जाएगा, नहीं होता. ठीक है? So please remember, exposure and response prevention that you need to remember is the best psychotherapy used for a case of obsessive compulsive disorder. कोई दिक्कत नहीं है यहाँ पे? Great. चलो. If I talk about differences between OCD and autism, the reason is if it is an adult, so a lot of time happens that we are easily able to diagnose it as OCD. But if a child comes to you, you will be confused whether it is a case of obsessive compulsive disorder or it is a case of autism for that matter. So these two can be misdiagnosed as well. So if I talk about this, so what is OCD? We discussed already. It is persistent and unwanted thoughts, urges or sensations and the images. That means obsessions which will keep on coming into your mind. Now, to overcome that, what we need to do? We need to do some repetitive behaviors, okay, or these are functions to reduce the anxiety which are associated with the obsessions. These are called as compulsions. That is OCD. Okay, that's important over here. Now, here, there is a direct relationship between the compulsion and the obsession. That means, for example, he is getting an obsession of contamination of hand and therefore is not going and playing cricket, for example. Okay. So these both are related. That means if he's getting the obsessions of contamination of hand, he's going and washing his hand. That means they are actually attached. They have a relationship with each other. Okay. Whereas if I talk about autism, here also the patient will have repetitive behavior, but it is not attached with any obsession. The patient is not getting any repetitive thoughts or recurrent thoughts in his mind. Okay. So autism, maybe the patient will have some repetitive behaviors. For example, the patient will keep on doing like this, or the patient will keep on banging his head. But it is not due to some obsessions. It has no relationship with the thoughts that he is getting. Okay? So that's the most important factor. Autism mein, the other important features which would be present, a autistic child will be having impairment in social interaction. That means बाकी लोगों से बात करने में the child will have a difficulty. ठीक है? There would be impairment in social interaction. He'll not be able to interact with his mother, father, or anybody for that matter. ठीक है? He'll not be able to make friends. He will be having lack of social smile. If somebody meets him, he'll not smile. He will not reciprocate. He'll not talk to them. He'll be isolated. That is what is a characteristic autistic person. Okay? That's important. And here the repetitive behaviors are for what? Repetitive behaviors are not due to obsessions, I said. So these repetitive behaviors are for self-soothing. The patient feels better after the patient keeps on doing some repetitive actions. Okay? So that is what is seen in cases of obsessions. Sorry, autism. No issues with this, anybody? So that's the important funda. So these are the important things that you need to remember. These are the basic differences. बाकी बहुत सारी similar चीजें होंगी, but these are the basic things that you need to differentiate between both of them. Now moving further, question number 2. It says what? It says Mr. John, a 45-year-old who has written a new book. Okay, some words are completely new and have never seen in any dictionary. Some of his themes are disjoint. His wife is saying that for last 9 months he's behaving in a different manner. Okay, for last 9 months he's behaving in a different manner, and his thoughts are completely different. He's suffering from. Very good, shabash. So he is definitely suffering from neologism. What is neologism? Neologism, neo means new, logism means words. Okay, so here the patient is coining some new words whose meaning cannot be understood by him also and by other people also. This new word, it is not present in any dictionary. There is no meaning of this particular word. Okay, so that is a characteristic feature of neologism. Okay, now neologism में एक नया word for example वो ला देता है, that is something like abadaba. Now there is no actually meaning that you can find in any dictionary for this particular word, but that person uses this particular word in a sentence or in a phrase while he is speaking to someone or while he is writing something. Okay, that is what is called as neologism. Neologism is a very characteristic feature of which condition, which psychiatric disorder? Psychiatric disorder पहले बता दो. It is a peculiar feature seen in a case of schizophrenia. Please remember, usually it is not commonly seen in every schizophrenic patient. But if neologism is present in some patient, the first thing that should come to your mind is definitely schizophrenia, because it is a very characteristic symptom of schizophrenia in a patient. Okay? So that's the important feature. Now, if I talk about neologism, which kind of disorder of thought it is? Now there are 4 disorders of thought. Okay, one is definitely the disorder of stream of thought, also called as disorder of flow of thought. That means, for example, it can be of 2 types. The disorder of stream or flow of thought can be of 2 types. For example, once here the patient is getting very rapid successive thoughts. एक के बाद एक बहुत rapid thoughts आ रहे patient में. That is what is called as flight of ideas. So what is flight of ideas? The patient is getting very rapid thoughts, one after the another. And that is a feature associated with which condition? Mania. Very good. That is a condition associated with mania. So first is definitely called as flight of ideas associated with mania. Okay? So increased speed of thought, in short. It is increased speed of thought. Second, completely opposite to this would be what? Completely opposite to this would be inhibition. What is inhibition? Decreased speed of thought. Here the patient will be having decreased speed of thought. Okay, याद रखना. मतलब one thought came to his mind, but वो अगला कुछ बोल ही नहीं पा रहा जल्दी, because उसके दिमाग में कुछ आ ही नहीं रहा है. ठीक है? In flight of ideas, for example. ठीक है? In flight of ideas कैसे याद रखोगे? Psychiatric disorders, please remember, if you feel that psychiatry is easy, psychiatry is not. It is somewhat complex, but you can make psychiatry easy. Allot a disorder to every friend of yours. बस याद करो कि ये disorder मेरे कौन से दोस्त में हो सकता है. ठीक है? That's what it is. That's how I also remember it. ठीक है? So one of my friend used to speak like this. My name is Omkar. I live in Delhi. Now I am teaching you psychiatry. And so this is what is called as an increased speed of thought. Now, as I'm having increased speed of thought, due to that, I'm able to speak faster. That is what is flight of ideas, which is seen actually in a case of mania. On the other hand, for example, if you see a patient, my name is Omkar. I live in Delhi. So here what is happening? He's not able to think faster. His speed of thinking is decreased. That is what is called as inhibition. And inhibition is a characteristic feature of. If flight of ideas is seen in mania, inhibition would be seen in depression. It is a characteristically opposite feature. It is seen in depression. Okay. Next is the disorder of content of thought. And this was the question. Okay. Which among the following is the disorder of content of thought? And that was asked you. What is the disorder of content of thought? Very good. That is delusion. And this was the previous year question. Twice asked. एक बार ये पूछा कि disorder of content of thought क्या होता है. एक बार ये पूछा delusion is a disorder of dash of thought. That is content of thought. ठीक है? So please remember, delusion is actually a disorder of content of thought. Now, what is delusion? Delusion is a false belief. ठीक है? So delusion is a false belief. What are the criteria? So it is a false belief which is very firm, fixed and unshakable. What do I mean by this? That means तुम कितना भी कुछ कर लो, the patient will still believe. Okay, for example, if I believe that Katrina Kaif loves me, so if I believe if Katrina Kaif loves me, ठीक है, so that is definitely by delusion because it is a false belief. Now, even all of you are trying to tell that she is not in love with me, okay, then also I'm having that belief. I'm not trying to accept because it is a firm, fixed and an unshakable belief that I'm having, and it will continue despite evidence against it. Matlab, even if you try to show me some evidence, even if she tries to send a video and say that I don't love him, then also I will not be able to I will not be able to accept because I will still give a reason to it कि नहीं उसके सर पे किसी ने बंदूक रखी होगी और फिर बुलवाया होगा. ठीक है? So that means this is such a false belief which is firm, fixed and so unshakable that it will still continue even after evidence against it. ठीक है? And the third most important criteria, it is usually not explained by the social and the cultural background of the patient. So this is a definition of delusion. ठीक है? ये definition है delusion की. ये एक बार जो समझ गया delusion समझ गया. ठीक है? It is not explained by the social and the cultural background of the patient. For example, I am saying कि Katrina Kaif is in love with me, but शायद मैं जहां से आता हूं मेरे आसपास के लोग मुझे चढ़ा रहे हैं. All of them are saying no, Katrina Kaif definitely loves you. मतलब मैं अकेला पागल नहीं हूं, मतलब पूरे के पूरे आसपास वाले भी पागल. So that is all. So please remember, it should not be explained by the social and cultural background of yours. For example, if a patient is having this false belief that Katrina Kaif loves him, if you even if you try to tell him, even if 100 people tries to tell him that no, she does not love you, even if you try to show some evidence, then also he's believing that no, she loves me. Then what you will do, you'll maybe ask his family members, you'll ask his community members that do you still believe that Katrina Kaif loves him? If they say nahi pagal hai, chodo isko. So if they say that no, he's having a false belief, that means the patient is definitely suffering from a delusion. But if they also say कि नहीं सच्ची प्यार करती है, तो they are suffering from a superstition, because a false belief which is shared by many people, it is what is called as a superstition. ठीक है? तो याद रखना है बात. So these are the important things about delusion. Which are the most common type of delusions, anybody? Delusion of persecution. Very good. The most common type of delusion are persecutory delusions or delusion of persecution, when a patient has a false belief that somebody is trying to harm me or somebody is trying to kill me. ठीक है? Somebody is trying to conspire against me. मेरी बीवी मुझे मारना चाहती है. ठीक है? So something like that. So delusions, the most common ones definitely are delusions of persecution. That was the question straight away. Most common type of delusions, and definitely delusions of persecution. And delusions of persecution are characteristically seen in which condition? Again, schizophrenia. Yes, very good. Delusions of persecution are again a feature of schizophrenia. The third one is disorder of possession of thought. What do I mean by disorder of possession? What is possession? That means the thought which is coming into my mind is my own thought. जो ख्याल मेरे दिमाग में आ रहा है, ये ख्याल मेरा अपना है. That means the possession of thought of this patient is absolutely normal. But in case if he believes that the thought which is coming into my mind is not my own thought, somebody is trying to insert these thoughts into my mind, this is called as thought insertion. वो क्या बोल रहा है? The patient is coming to you and he's saying कि Doctor Saab, I was sitting in my room and then I feel that my neighbor or my wife is trying to insert some thoughts into my mind. ठीक है? So that is the case of thought insertion. Second is, here the patient was sitting in his living room and now he feels कि Doctor Saab, I was speaking to someone but then I completely went blank. I completely went blank because I was not able to think anything. क्यों? क्योंकि किसी ने मेरे दिमाग से thought चुरा लिया. Somebody stole a thought from my mind, and that is what is called as thought withdrawal. That is known as thought withdrawal. ठीक है? The third feature is when the patient was sitting, for example, in the living room and he says, Doctor Saab, I was thinking कि I should go for a football match, and then my wife came and she brought the tickets of that football match. That means she knows what I was thinking because my thoughts are getting broadcasted. मेरे जो ख्याल है, मैं जो दिमाग में सोचता हूँ, वो सबको पता चल जा रहा है. That is what is a case of thought broadcast. Together, all these three are called as thought alienation symptoms. ठीक है? So that's the important funda. So that is the disorder of possession of thought. That means whatever I'm thinking, it is not a product of my own mind. Rather, somebody else is trying to either insert or steal some thoughts from my mind. ठीक है? तो possession of thought disorders क्या हो सकती है? Possession of thought की disorders would be either it is thought insertion, it is thought withdrawal, and last one is thought broadcasting. So these three features are called as thought alienation symptoms, I told you, and these are also seen in a case of schizophrenia again. Okay. Last is the disorder of form of thought. So form of thought is also known as disorder of organization of thought. That means a thought was well formed, it was well organized. Okay. But now it is disturbed if a patient is suffering from a disorder of form of thought or a disorder of organization of thought. So if a patient is suffering from disorder of form of thought or organization of thought, these disorders are called as formal thought disorders. These are called as formal thought disorders. Now, here the form or the organization of thought is getting disturbed. For example, if I'm saying that my name is Omkar and I live in Delhi. This is my first thought. Second, I am teaching psychiatry. This is my thought number 2. Now, if both of these are connected with each other, that means my form of thought is absolutely normal because both of them are connected with each other. ठीक है? Now, second scenario में क्या होता है? For example, if I'm saying कि my name is Omkar and I live in Delhi, okay, उसके बाद मैं क्या बोलता हूँ? For example, India won the World Cup. So now, have like the first thought and the second thought, are they connected to each other? No, they do not have any connection with each other. So if thought 1 and thought 2 or successive thoughts, if they have no connection with each other, that formal thought disorder in a patient is what is called as derailment. That formal thought disorder is what is known as derailment. क्या हो गया? मैं ट्रैक से हट गया. I was going on a track and then I got derailed. ठीक है? That is what is called as derailment. ठीक है? No connection between the first thought and the second thought. That is derailment. Similar condition is what is called as loosening of association. What do I mean by loosening of association? So loosening of association. My first thought was what? My name is Omkar and I live in Delhi. So now this first thought has two components in it, right? First component is my name is Omkar, and next component is I live in Delhi. Okay. Now both these components of the same thought. I'm saying about the same thought now. Okay. I'm not talking about the first and second. I'm saying the components of the same thought. Are they connected with each other? Yes, they are connected with each other. But for example, if I say my name is Omkar and Bollywood is a very huge industry. Now these are components of the same thought, na? And बीच में use कर रहा हूँ ना. So these are components of the same thought. But are they connected with each other? No. So if the components of the same thought are not connected with each other, that is what is called as loosening of associations. ठीक है? तो याद रख लो, derailment is no connection between the first and the second thought, but loosening of association is no connection between the components of the same thought. ठीक है? So that is what is a very close differential over here. The next one is what is called as circumstantiality. What do I mean by circumstantiality? Important question which came in your examination. If I ask you a question, what is your name? And you start saying, for example, my family was very excited when I was born. Okay? My bua came to my home and she thought about naming me. Then actually I grew up. Okay, I went into school. So then I thought I should change my name. So this is what all of this that he's speaking about are unnecessary details that he's giving. Okay, so if a patient gives unnecessary details, but all these details are connected with the question that you asked, yes, they're somewhere connected to the question that you have asked to the patient. Okay, So definitely the patient is giving some unnecessary details, but finally the patient will tell you, okay, my name is Omkar. So now, has the patient answered your question? Yes, he has answered my question. So is the final goal reached? Yes, the final goal is ultimately reached. But in between, what happened? All that bullshit, all that unnecessary details were given to you. This is what is called as circumstantiality. ठीक है? तो for example, if normal patient को पूछते तो क्या बोलता? What is your name? He would have said, my name is Omkar. This was it. अब ये circumstantiality वाला क्या कर रहा है? What is your name? All that unnecessary details he is giving, and then finally he is answering your question. He is finally reaching from point A to point B. If I talk about the next condition, which is called as tangentiality. So it is close differential again. What is the tangentiality? Tangent मुझे सबको I hope mathematics से कहीं याद आ रहा हो. A line which touches only at one point of a circle is called as a tangent. ठीक है? So tangentiality is what? Here if you ask the patient, what is your name? The patient starts saying, so all that stuff again. ठीक है? मेरी बुआ को मेरा नाम अच्छा लगा था, ये था, वो था. मेरी बुआ के बच्चों के नाम ये है, मेरे चाचा के बच्चों के नाम ये है, फिर इसलिए मेरे माँ बाप ने सोचा मेरा नाम ये रखना है. Finally, all this unnecessary details he is giving. And is he answering your question finally? No. He does not tell you what is his name. So, for example, here from point A, when you ask the question, he gave you all that unnecessary details. Okay, but he did not reach the point B. That is what is called as tangentiality. वो अलग ही tangent पे जी रहा है हम बोलते हैं ना. So that means he is not having connection with the question that you have asked. ठीक है? So that's important. Next one is neologism. I already told you. Neologism is coining a new word whose meaning could not be understood by anyone. Okay, that is what is called as neologism. Okay, so these are the important ones at least that you need to remember. And the last one, at least remember, the last two. Incoherence. What is incoherence? It is word salad. What is word salad? My, his, name, we, went, came, go, hi, bye. So here, is any word having connection with the other word? No. If there is no connection with any word, that is what is called as incoherence, or these are only words mixed together like a salad. Okay? There is no meaning getting conveyed from this. Okay? So if no meaning gets conveyed, only it is just a collection of words, that is what is called as word salad, or it is known as incoherence. Okay? And the last one that you need to remember over here is called as perseveration. So what is perseveration? You will ask the patient, what is your name? He says, Omkar. Okay, then you ask the patient, where you live? I'm saying Omkar. Then you ask, how many children do you have? I'm saying Omkar. Then what qualification you have? I'm saying Omkar. So here what is happening? A same thought is getting repeated multiple number of times. Okay, a thought is there for beyond a point of relevance. Okay, जब तक मैंने नाम पूछा था तब तक ये आंसर आता तब तक ठीक था, बट उसके बावजूद भी आंसर कंटिन्यूअसली आ रहा है. दैट मींस दिस थॉट is there in the patient for a prolonged duration of time beyond a point of relevance. जहां उसकी जरूरत नहीं है वहां भी वो वही आंसर कर रहा है. ठीक है, so that is what is the case of perseveration, and this was your previous year question. ठीक है, they gave an example when patient was asked different questions, he was giving the same answer. They asked, which among the following thought disorder is described in the above given question? Answer was straight away perseveration. ठीक है, सबसे आसान यही है मेरे हिसाब से तो. ठीक है, तो याद रख लो, here a thought is getting conveyed beyond a point of relevance. That is what is perseveration. So now you know neologism is a disorder of. So neologism is definitely a disorder of the form of thought or the organization of thought, right? The form or the organization of the thought is disturbed. इसीलिए the patient is trying to coin new terms usually. ठीक है? So that's important. चलो. Moving question number 3. A recently diagnosed patient of schizophrenia gets afraid after seeing the Omni car. He runs away as he thinks he will be kidnapped soon. He complains that it happens every time whenever he looks at an Omni car. His condition can be better described as. So, for example, if it was specific phobia, how they would have described it, please remember.